Good evening. I would like to call to order the Milton Planning Board's 19th meeting of fiscal year 2020. I am Cheryl Tagayas, the chair, and I'll ask the other members to state their names as well. So we'll start with Rich.
Rich Beeler, member.
And then we'll go to Kathleen.
Kathleen O'Donnell, member.
And then we'll go to Denny.
Denny Swinson, secretary.
And it looks like April's joining us now, so we'll see where.
She's saying the password isn't working.
She's in. Let me see.
I'm in. Sorry, everybody. I was.
Okay. And April, can you just say your name for us, please?
April Anderson, member.
Okay, so we have all of the planning board members. So I'm going to say a few things to open. In accordance with the governor's order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law relating to the 2020 coronavirus outbreak emergency, this meeting of the Milton Planning Board is being held remotely utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software. The login and call-in information is included on the agenda, which is on the screen. The meeting is being televised live via Milton Access Television. So if people are watching and can see and they want to participate, Bill, I don't see, well, at least on my screen, that those numbers are covered by can we get that into the middle somehow, the call-in information?
The agenda?
Yeah.
Oh, your comment sheet?
No,
What's on there?
The agenda itself, which has the phone number and the very top
Page
of
2.
the agenda.
I can do that.
Just has the meeting ID and the phone number, the meeting ID, the password. So while you're getting that, this meeting is also being recorded, so it will be available on the Milton Access Television's website and also on their programming when they replay our meetings. Real-time public comment can be made via the audio feature of the platform, and that's either by computer or mobile device or phone. We are learning that if we unmute everyone at the same time, we get a lot of background noise. So what I'm going to do is if people would like to comment at certain points that we see comment, I will ask them to raise their hand, and then I will unmute that person at that time. So we'll see how that works. And if we have troubles, we can alter that. Okay, so on to our agenda item. Our next meeting dates at the moment are scheduled for April 23rd and May 14th. So we will continue to evaluate whether we'll have particularly the April 23rd meeting. But I did want to share some information. There was a law passed on Friday, and I've received some input from town council this week. And so per his guidance, I'm going to make a statement here. That law is section 17 of chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020. And under the act, the default is to postpone public hearings on new applications until after the declaration of emergency has been lifted. For public hearings open before or after March 10th, which is when that declaration was declared, the default is to postpone, but discretion is given to the board. Under the act, modifications to permits and revocations of permits must continue to be heard. The act is not intended to call for the cease of work of the planning board. So I'm going to address the two public hearings and how we're handling those at the time that they're scheduled, which actually the first one is scheduled at 7:05 and it's 7:10. So we'll start with that. But if there's any question or comment about that from board members? So, okay, so seeing none, I'll move on to the statement about the continue hearing of the site plan approval for Little Sprouts Preschool at 919 Blue Hill Avenue. Pursuant to Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, the chair declares that the public hearing for 919 Blue Hill Ave, Little Sprouts, is continued until May 14th at 7:05 p.m. If the governor has not lifted the declaration of emergency by that time, the hearing may be continued. The applicant has been informed of this decision and is in agreement with it. So we cannot yet move to our 7:20 public hearing, which is 25 Bryant Ave. So I would like to take the old business item of the 131 Elliott Hendry's building. So Bill, if you could pull that letter up.
Yep.
So the 131 Elliott is, I think everyone knows, is under construction. They have a pause right now. I heard from Steve Connolly that the contractor is evaluating how they could continue given the regulations and the rules under how construction sites would have to work under this declaration. So at the moment it's paused. But in February, we did receive a request for some modifications to the special permit. They came in as a request for us to consider them as de minimis. So I wanted for us to discuss these proposed modifications tonight to see if we agree with them being de minimis or if we think that we would like for them to apply for an amendment to the special permit. Okay, so Bill, the three modifications are outlined in the memo from O'Sullivan Architects. So could you pull that up, Bill?
Yep, wait a minute. I actually got lost.
It's easy to do. So I'll just start with the first one. The parking counts. You say in the memo, and this is something that Joe Prondak also reached out to us about, or to Bill and to me about. They had to have, as you know, when plans go from permit approval through construction document ready for construction, further detail is required and further code analysis is required. And what they found was that they needed to add a stair from the garage to the exterior, which required the removal of 2 parking spaces. And they were able to reconfigure to gain one back on the first floor. So the 2 that were lost were on the ground floor. And so there's a net loss of 1 space. The 87 spaces rather than 88 spaces still conforms to the zoning, but it doesn't conform specifically to the language of the special permit, because the special permit itself is specific as to how many parking spaces need to be on each floor. Thoughts?
Is that something we can do a waiver on, or?
They only need 87. They had 88, they put in 88. They only need 87. If you look at the screen and see the, okay, it won't do it. If you go just above to the left of
It
the,
was doing it, Bill. It's doing it. When you're pointing, we can see it right there.
okay, I'm watching the TV at the same time, making sure that the public sees what I'm seeing, but it's delayed. This is the staircase that had to be added. It also had to have an exit to the outside for fire safety. It's right here. This is that parking space that got taken away. So there are 87 parking spaces. They wound up having to take 2 because of the way they reconfigured. They picked one up on the first floor upstairs.
Okay.
So Joe Prondak, the reason he reached out was because of the specific language in the special permit.
It said 88. He wants cover taking it down to 87.
So I think what we can
I'm-
do,
Okay with it if others aren't. I, they have a lot of parking and they've also got like community parking in their plan. So I think that stairwell safety was a good feature.
That still would have been one of the parking spaces for residents of the building. This doesn't even get near the exterior parking. They never touched any of that number out here.
Right. Okay.
So I'm sorry, Denny, were you done?
I'm all done.
I mean, I have absolutely no objection to the request, whether it's de minimis or not. I don't know. I'll leave it to the lawyer to figure out maybe. Kathleen.
Well,
I don't know if the true
and I think,
de minimis is or if it's just a judgment call, but either way, I'm in support of this request.
so before, I guess we decide on all three, why don't we go, or instead of deciding on them individually, maybe let's go through all three. And then come back overall, if that's okay.
Yep.
All right, so the second one relates to the roof plan requirements, and it's a requirement to have screening around the rooftop equipment. What they're proposing is to do a mock-up and see whether the equipment can be seen, and if it cannot be seen, whether they could, that provision be deleted, so not requiring the screening. So I think that's, again, we can come
That's
back.
information still to come because he hasn't given us a mock-up of what the roof looks like.
And
So
it
we
would-
can't even talk about that one.
Right, and it wouldn't be until they get that level of the roof constructed. So I think that might take some time out. I guess the question would be whether we want to entertain it or not. And then the third one is related to the site lighting. And Bill, can you call up the image that I sent you? Which is the site plan from the approved special permit, which shows the lighting.
I can, but it's really hard to read. So what I'm going
Right.
to do is go back and open up a different one, if that's
Okay,
all right with you.
Yeah, can we draw on the screen?
No, but this is the page, so I know it's,
All right, while you're doing that, so what they didn't put in the memo was what was approved and what they're proposing is different than what was approved. So if we look at the language of the special permit in the lighting section on page 4, it spells out exactly what lighting is required, even though the site plan may not be consistent with it, because it says the lighting plan is revised and supplemented as follows. So it's requiring up to 3 historic lantern light fixtures to match the existing street lights on Elliott, 1 in the courtyard and 1 in the Elliott Street green area. And what,
this is the one that you gave me,
yeah.
and
Okay,
it
so
gets really,
just leave it like that, right there,
Fuzzy.
because that's fine enough. So
Okay.
I circled the fixtures on here. So you can see that there's 5 fixtures shown on this plan that are along the street. There are 4 fixtures shown within the parking lot, and then there are bollards shown along the walkway, and then there are no light fixtures shown on Central Ave. So the language says that there would be 2 additional fixtures added to Central Ave, and that there would be 4 12-foot high fixtures in the parking lot. So Bill, now can you go to what the proposed amended site plan is with the light fixtures on it? That red one is an existing light fixture by the MBTA site. You gotta rotate, there you go. Okay, so I think there, Bill, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
There is a light down in the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah,
There's
so
another
on,
light up here.
right.
This
that's-
one exists, but it doesn't really show up, but there is a light in that top right-hand corner.
Right, and is there a light down at the rounded part of the intersection?
There's a light here. Can you see the
Existing,
cursor
I can
moving?
see it, right.
Okay. And if I pull it up just a little bit, there's another light right here.
So they're proposing to add one light rather than two on Elliott because there are already several fixtures there, okay? So then,
No, they're proposing to put in 3 on Elliott,
I'm sorry, on Central, one on Central.
1 on Central, right
No,
here.
sorry. So they're proposing to put the 3 in on Elliott still.
Yep.
So,
1,
right.
2,
So,
and
and
3.
then they've taken and removed the 2 pole fixtures from the green space and from the, let's see how it was described here, the courtyard, and plan to use building mount fixtures and the bollards to light those areas instead. So the more significant change, if you pan over a little bit further, Bill, sorry, to see the parking lot, is they're proposing 2 fixtures in the parking lot rather than 4. And while the foot candle levels be adequate, they're changing from a 12-foot pole to a 15-foot high pole, which makes the spread greater, but changes kind of the character of the parking lot. So those of you who may recall when we looked at Milton Marketplace, we required in the areas that are closer to the residential that they've installed 12-foot. And this is next to residential on the left side, which is my recollection why the board required the 12-foot poles in the special permit.
It did.
So in,
It seems like a
So-
smaller space, though. I don't know. I almost feel like going on the sidewalk. But in response to the second one, I feel similar to April in that I'm happy to work with them on the second one and go to the site when they're ready and work from there. As to whether it's de minimis or not, I agree. That seems like a legal question.
Kathleen has her hand up.
I do.
You have the floor.
So looking at your special permit, it says that there has to be strict compliance with the provisions of the special permit, all the terms and conditions. So since that language is in there, it seems to me that we'd have to amend the special permit to allow the building commissioner to sign off on the parking space reconfiguration and also on the other 2 requests. I did represent the town, the select board, at the 40B hearings for this project. And there was a lot of talk at that time about the visuals of the mechanicals on the roof, the impact on the abutting neighbors. So I'm really wondering why we would allow the higher light poles, because I said that was a huge issue for the abutters when this project was being proposed. And I don't see a point in giving them a waiver on the roof when we don't know what it's going to look like.
So it sounds to me like, Kathleen, you think that in any case, it should be an application for an amendment to the special permit.
I think looking at the language in your special permit where it says strict compliance, I don't see any, it's on page 13 or something like that. I said, I just don't see that you got any flexibility in there.
Okay. April or Rich, do you have any thoughts about that?
Can I go first?
Yes.
I would say I have no problem with the parking, the screening on the roof. I'm open to discussing in the future. The lights, I would lean toward keeping them at 12 feet. for the sake of the neighbors, because there isn't a butter that's really right on this property line. And I just think they would look nicer than really tall light fixtures there. But if we need to make an amendment, fine. My question is really more, I think, towards Kathleen, in that we've had a couple of adjustments to this permit already.
Yeah.
And I assume it's because of the language that we have in there about strict compliance. Is there an opportunity for us to adjust that line? And so it could be a little more flexible with moving forward, so that every time, you know, a pebble goes to the left, they don't have to keep coming back to us for an amendment.
Well, it does seem, I mean, as I said, it seems to be pretty tight, and I don't know why you would do that. Like, yeah, as I said, putting in a fire safety staircase is a great thing. You know, you'd hate to say, no, I don't want you to do that. But as I said, it doesn't, usually you have some language in here that says, you know, de minimis changes can be made with the approval of the building commissioner, but there, I didn't see that in here.
So
Maybe-
can we edit the that permit now to, instead of strict compliance, to add material compliance or whatever language you just used?
The judgment of the building commissioner
Yeah.
is generally in compliance with the
Because
permit.
it seems to me that they're coming to us with a lot of really minor things,
Yeah,
really change the project at all.
I would
And I,
say, my suggestion is, if you want to change it, I think we need to take that up as an amendment item that gets advertised.
Yeah.
To be consistent with the way we've addressed other revisions to special permits.
mhm.
In the event that there's members of the public who might live near there, who might not be aware of these proposed changes, who might have comment about it. It's not just what you see from the street for mechanical equipment. If you have a two-story house and you're looking out your window of your second floor, what do you see? And the strict compliance, my recollection is that the reason that some things are written in the language that aren't reflected in the plans is that the plans were going to be further modified after the special permit, and the board wanted to be clear in the language of what we were approving.
but then if you weren't going to have the completed form or the completed plans, what did you have in this permit that sort of says, oh, we can come back and take a look at stuff?
Well, there's always the opportunity to come back and seek an amendment to a special permit.
No, but I mean, well,
The only one that the permit actually, they said they were gonna come back to was for the roof, mock-up for the roof.
yeah.
That was the only one that they originally said they'd have to come back because they,
Right, but there are some things that say that they're going to be covered in the materials meeting. I don't think the lighting is one of them. One of the things that I didn't read the entire paragraph on the lighting, but the last sentence in the special permit under lighting is, all lights shall be positioned so as to prevent light overspill into nearby residential areas. It shall be compatible with building design and scale and style.
and they had their materials meeting a couple of months ago.
Right.
So there's your answer. So they should stick to 12 feet or come back with an amendment, and it's debatable as to whether or not we would give them an amendment based on the public feedback, which it sounds like they've already received public feedback that the neighbors right near it don't want any spillover. So I don't know that we would grant it.
Well, the photometric plan that they submitted doesn't show spillover.
Yeah.
But,
Shows 0.
right, so it doesn't show that. It's just that when you have a 15-foot high fixture versus a 12-foot high, your throw is different and you need less fixtures. So it's a different, so in terms of understanding what that might look like, if we do suggest to them that they apply for an amendment, in the meantime, maybe we can locate some fixtures that are 12 feet and some that are 15 feet, and members of the board can take a look at the difference.
But what's the reasoning behind it? I mean, why do they need to change it? I mean, I can see the parking, that makes sense.
The reason wasn't given for the parking lot. for the streets, it's, you know, the quantities of fixtures there on Central was the reason for that one. And as far as why the change in the courtyard and the green space, they don't say in their memo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, well, why are they bothered? I mean, what's the reasoning behind it?
I asked the question about can we get the lighting person to make a comment? The lighting person was just furloughed. So I don't have an opportunity to ask that question.
Yeah.
They will in a few weeks, I guess, have that person back, but
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get that person for tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing about lighting, if they're doing their, depending upon their sequence, if they're not under construction right now, it might not have an impact, but generally they would need to get their underground power to these locations.
Sure.
So, you know, in sequence of construction, I'm not so sure that the ones, so the parking lot ones are probably the more significant of the fixtures. I doubt they'll be doing the street lighting ones immediately.
Yeah.
So I guess my suggestion would be then if they have to come for an amendment anyway, I mean, they have to put the staircase in, so they have to come for an amendment either way. They can ask for an amendment for the lighting at the same time.
Yep.
And we can deal with it then, I guess. And this is something that I am in favor of continuing to pursue because it's an ongoing project and they're, you know, unless they hear from us, they can't move forward. So they might be in a freeze now, but if there's a chance to get going, I'd like to see this continue to move. So I'm definitely in favor of returning via Zoom to address these issues.
Right.
Yeah, given how long it took for this project to get off the ground, we don't want to slow it down in any way. So I agree. I feel like we should.
Yeah, and we could put into it, you know, a discussion, a change to the permit that allows for some, you know, more limited flexibility.
Yeah, I would favor that.
Okay. So Bill, can you give that feedback to the Connollys?
Yes, I will.
Okay, great. Any other discussion on this topic, folks?
No.
Okay. All right, so then we will move back to our public hearing for 25 Bryant Ave. Just give me a second to get to my agenda. Okay. So pursuant to Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, the chair declares that the public hearing for 25 Bryant Ave will be heard this evening, and that pursuant to Chapter 53 of the Acts of 2020, the board may close the hearing and issue a site approval decision should it elect to do so. Since our meeting 2 weeks ago, we've received a number of emails in support of Dr. Joffrey and his application. I did receive a phone call on April 3rd from Dr. Tracy Maloney, who's an orthodontist across the highway from 25 Bryant Ave. And she, since her office had been closed, she had just gone in that day to receive her mail and hadn't received the notice of the hearing 2 weeks ago until the day after. So I think, Denny, good call. Thank you for suggesting that that may be the case.
You know,
I just want to say I had a long conversation with Dr. Maloney about what site plan approval entails for this particular project and what we're limited to, considering that it's an existing building, so it has some things grandfathered, for example, the lack of parking. She did express concerns about parking and safety issues in general. It's really, she's an orthodontist as well. And so she understands the appointment schedules and children who are coming to these types of offices and safety considerations for drop off and pickup. And so I would like to, and I suggested to her that she speak with the Traffic Commission and that we would keep her abreast of our planning work in East Milton, because her comments and experiences of having been there for decades, I think would be valuable for people to understand and to get her feedback. So what I'd like to do is suggest that the applicant and applicant's attorney, Mary McKettrick, reach out to Dr. Maloney and just and talk, maybe they can work together with the Traffic Commission to address some of the thoughts and concerns that she expressed to me in her email to Bill.
So, hi, this is Ilan Jaffer. So I did reach out to Dr. Maloney, and we had a lengthy conversation on, I want to say, I think it was yesterday, on Wednesday, and definitely very, very open to having that mutual conversation with whomever in the town is going to be responsible for helping to mitigate whatever concerns there may be from a safety perspective, but also just making sure that we're working collaboratively to ensure that whatever result, ends up coming out of the overall improvement of the square, that it will be to the benefit of not just patients who may be coming to either of our practices, but just for the general pedestrian in and around that area.
Very good, thank you. I'm sorry I mispronounced your name.
Oh, that's fine. It's okay. It's certainly okay.
Okay. And Marion, you're muted. Did you want to add anything?
Just that, of course, I would be willing to, I'd be happy to talk to the neighbor as well, across the expressway. And we are going to be continuing to meet with the Traffic Commission because we have 2 requests that we had submitted to them. One was to add more regular parking spaces rather than permit spaces on Bryan Ave. And the other one has to do with a small area of town land next to this building that's been designated no parking because of complaints from a neighbor a number of years ago. That neighbor's not there anymore, and the neighbor there now doesn't have any objection. So we're going to be pursuing that. Those have both been continued for future meetings. But the general issue of traffic in the square, I'm sure we'll all be involved with, and I'd be happy to talk to her about it some more too. And some of her other concerns too, I think that she's expressed to Dr. Joffrey.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Marion.
I'm a little bit concerned about, she says the town parking policies are not uniform.
Really?
No, I am concerned about that.
And I do, that's why I do think it's really important for her and for others to really work with the Traffic Commission, because as we all know, they made some changes recently to having, and one of the things that Dr. Maloney told me on the phone was that there are parking spaces in front of her building available in certain hours. Other hours, it's a drive lane. So she has recently pulled up into those spaces during the hours in which they're marked that if they're available for parking. And she said a police officer, in a very unfriendly way, told her she wasn't able to park there and she was loading supplies into her building. So this is really for, I think, traffic commission and for enforcement in East Milton. And I know that a lot of businesses have a lot of shared concerns about how things work. And I know that Beta Group recently sent a draft of their work in doing some analysis of the parking utilization and the loading zone in East Milton. And I think we all received copies of that. But as we do our work in East Milton, in studying 40R and also in the traffic work that Beta's working on, and the whole parking utilization needs some serious attention.
I second that.
So if there are any other comments from the board at this time?
I have heard positive feedback. I have heard from people in East Milton that they like the facelift, and everybody likes handicap access. So it seems like the parking issue is the remaining issue.
All right.
But I don't think the parking issue is as serious on his side of the highway as it is on the other side, on Granite and Willard.
Okay.
When I was on the zoning board, we had an application for a 6-unit building a rental and mix and office right next to, I think, where the orthodontist is.
Right.
And that side of the street is very difficult. There's a lane that had parking in it that is now a right turn lane by the fire station. Whereas across the street on Bryant, there's parking spaces near the post office. There's parking spaces on the road. I think it's a different situation on that other side of the street.
She mentioned, Kathleen, that most of those spaces on that side of the street are service zone parking. So that's where it needs to be looked at, because maybe some of those shouldn't be changed from service zone to something that could be used for this business, right? So that's what I mean, like really, I know she said she parks on that side in the service zone parking, and her staff. So that's why I think the encouragement that we gave and that was accepted to work with those businesses and look at that parking and advise the traffic commission of what they think would work better there, I think is a good route.
Well, so I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
So Kathleen, before you make
application.
the motion, or before I entertain the motion, I'd like to see.
I was just saying I would like to. I didn't say I was.
I just would like to see if there's anybody on who would like to address the board before we close the hearing. So I'm looking at the list of people, and if you can raise a hand somehow, if you are interested in talking. Okay, I don't see any. All right, so first thing would be closing the public hearing.
I would like to make a motion to close the public hearing on the Bryant Ave application.
A second.
Okay, we need to do a roll call vote. So all those in favor, Cheryl Tagayas, yes.
Richard Beeler, yes.
Denny Swenson, yes.
April Anderson, yes.
Kathleen O'Donnell, yes.
And Rich, I think I barely heard you, but can you say it again?
Rich Beeler, yes.
Thank you. Okay. So then we had 2 weeks ago asked Marion if she would draft a decision for us, a site plan approval decision, which she did and was circulated. Did everyone have a chance to look at that?
Yep.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions, comments, or amendments to make to it?
No.
I didn't. Thank you, Marion. That was well done. One of the things I'd like to say is that that we approve of this language, and I'd also like for us to give authority to the town planner to sign on behalf of the entire board, seeing that we may have difficulty in getting all of our signatures in person.
Yes.
Okay, so then I'll take a motion to that effect on both approving the language and on the authorization to the town planner.
I would make a motion to approve the application, the site plan decision, and to authorize the town planner to execute the decision on behalf of the planning board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Again, roll call vote. All those in favor, Cheryl Tagayas, yes.
April Anderson, yes.
Kathleen O'Donnell, yes.
Richard Beeler, yes.
Denny Swenson, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, I'm going to mispronounce it again. Dr. Joffrey?
Yes, this is Dr. Joffrey. It's interesting. Everyone just calls me Dr. J, so, or whichever is more comfortable.
All right, well, thank you, Dr. J, and thank you, Marion.
Thank you, Marion.
Hey.
I look forward to seeing that nice looking building. It's gonna be
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Thank you. I look forward to, the project. I look forward to being a wonderful neighbor in the business district, and hopefully we can come up with something that everyone can be proud of, and that will be an enhancement to the area. So that's the plan, and we'll see. I think we'll be able to accomplish it. That's the goal. So we'll work towards that.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck to you.
Cheryl, can I just make one comment?
Sure.
I'm going to say thank you to everybody who wrote in the letters of support. We usually don't hear from people when they're in support of things. It's much easier to come out when you're objectionable. And it was really nice to see so many people take the time and energy to engage with letters of support. So thanks for everyone who did that.
Yes, okay, thank you, April. Well said.
Yeah, well said.
I just want to come back now to see if there is anyone on participating in the meeting for citizens speak.
I'll unmute everybody, and if there's somebody there that wants it, they can do it. Otherwise, I'll mute them all.
Okay.
Try that again.
All right.
Anybody have any comment that they want to make for citizen speak?
Okay. Seeing none.
Go back and mute everybody.
Right.
That everybody but the committee.
Right. So now we'll take up the 40B site plan eligibility application, our letters. I do want to note that the select board and their consultant Judy Barrett do have our letters for the 582 Blue Hill Ave and the 648 Canton Ave applications, as well as the graphics package that was distributed to all of us, and that was updated slightly from our last meeting. I did hear late today that the select board has set a deadline of Monday, so only a couple of days from now, to receive our letter for East Milton. There had been some confusion in the past week about whether we had submitted our letters and whether they would be submitted in time to be considered by Judy Barrett. So I asked to be given a time frame in which we needed to submit our letter. So that's why we were given Monday date. All right, so the other thing I want to say on the East Milton application, all of us trying to do our best to work within the timeframes that Mass Housing has not adjusted. There was some communication via email amongst board members, and that communication is now going to be discussed fully here at our meeting, okay? So Kathleen prepared, and thank you, Kathleen, for drafting all 3 of those letters. I know that there's a lot of work and a lot of your experts included in that on our behalf, so thank you. On the East Milton, I know that Denny has some comments she would like to review. I know Kathleen has some further comments she would like to review. So we can start with those, and then April and Rich, we can take up any others that you may have and one comment that I have, okay? So Denny, you have the floor. And Bill, can you pull up?
Okay. All right. So,
Here's the letter.
yes.
And the yellow parts are the parts added in by Denny.
Okay. All right. So, Kathleen agreed to incorporate the first sentence that was highlighted. So thank you, if others agree. And then the second blurb of highlight is sort of more background detail on the East Milton activities over the years.
I'm fine with that.
You're fine with keeping that? Or,
Yes.
okay. The whole thing in yellow?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. Then we go into design. All right, if we keep going. I'm sorry.
Denny, if you look on the screen, I think you can see under design what.
Yeah. All right. If you keep scrolling down to, let's see, just under having the courtyard, keep going.
Can I, on the design part then, on the courtyard, All right, never mind. We'll come back to my comment on that. Keep going.
You
Um,
want to
it
go
was-
further down?
Yep, keep going. Okay. See the part where it says, for pedestrian friendly features,
Right
the
there.
Yep.
Yep, for pedestrian-friendly features, the community is interested in wide, well-lit sidewalks with traffic calming measures like trees or landscape and stoplights that are responsive to pedestrian and vehicular traffic. For background, I wasn't necessarily thinking of adding stoplights. Or-
Good call.
I wasn't necessarily thinking if an engineer thought we should, or if traffic
Rich
safety.
and I would kill you if you made us add another stoplight over here.
I hear you. I'd probably kill you if you tried to do that in my neighborhood too. But I just wanted, those responsive ones. So if a pedestrian walks up to the light, or if a, vehicle approaches, I wanted those sensitive, responsive ones. And I wasn't thinking of speed bumps. I was thinking of traffic calming measures like a little bit of open space, a little landscape here and there, a pocket park, anything along those lines. So,
That's fine.
okay, so we will put that, so for pedestrian friendly, that sentence.
Yep.
We will keep. Okay, so on the
But the next one, I just wanted to point out is that I think you read that wrong. In the application, it's actually referring to amenities that are located off the site.
And you are right. Good catch. I thought, scratch out the first sentence where it says on page 6.
Yeah.
The first sentence, but perhaps we might like to keep the second sentence. Says parking lot islands with grass and trees on them is not an actual conservation or recreation area. With that many,
Except they haven't promised to do that.
right, but with that many units, there needs to be a play area for children and seating areas for families that will live on the site.
Well, yeah, maybe if we just, I'll take a look and we'll rewrite that a little bit.
Okay, because we did have success in this before, because we put it in the site applicable application
Mhm.
for Milton Muse, and it did come back as a condition in the approval letter. So it's worth the effort.
Okay.
So thank you. Okay, so under water issues. Okay, so wanted to get people's opinions on whether or not to attach the emails showing the water, the flooding on Franklin Street. I don't know if people had time to look at the attachments, but sometimes a picture says 1,000 words, and I thought these letters.
I did look at those and I did listen to the select board's meeting the other night, where many people talked about the issues on Franklin Street. It is an issue all over the place in this side of town because we actually don't really have very many storm drains in our streets here in East Milton. There's a terrible flooding problem on my street, and they're on other places as well because there are no storm drains. By law, a developer has to deal with stormwater on their site. They're not allowed to let water loose, and they can't make the situation worse. So I think it's good to point this all out. I would be surprised if Judy Barrett will include those emails and photographs for Franklin Street in the select board's letter. But since I now understand the process better with the select board as a result of our scrambling around after the select board's meeting the other night, is that I drafted these letters on the assumption that they were going to be attached to the select board's letter and going to Mass Housing as well. And that's not the way the select board has decided to do this. So they're sending everything to Judy, and she's writing her own letter and for the select board, and probably using many of the things that we have raised, but would not attach our letter as an exhibit. that's her policy, and the chair of the select board is so advised that that's the way he wants to do it. In other situations, in other towns where I've represented clients, it has gone, the letters from the town boards have been attached to the select board's letter, but that's not the way that Chair Zulus wants to do it. So I don't have a problem with adding it into our letter. I just letting you know that it probably won't be going to mass housing.
Okay. All right. Okay, then that's good news to me. If the rest of the board agrees, then the next paragraph says there is inadequate provisions for snow storage. Oh, I kind of finessed the language slightly about the snow storage. I want to say there's a lack of space on the plan for snow banks. The neighbors also cite concerns for the safety of children who may be attracted to play on the steep snowbank.
I don't know whether, yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's a serious, I mean, it's certainly the issue about snowbanks, but, you know, as I said, who knows? The site's so small anyway. I mean, there's all sorts of issues all over the place, but I don't think that the safety, you know, I don't know that that's an issue that we would want to include, but I don't have a problem with it. I don't know that Judy will include it, but, you know, as I said, now that I understand the process better, I'm like, yeah, fine.
Okay. Just FYI, snow removal appeared on other site eligibility letters, and it did appear as a condition on the letter back from Mass Housing. Okay, so moving right along. Traffic and transit. Let's see. I asked for an independent comprehensive traffic study, and there was some question about.
You can't ask for that. That's going to be before the ZBA. This is just a site eligibility letter for mass housing. And so traffic studies, stormwater studies, engineering studies, all those sorts of things are going to be done before the ZBA. We can't require that.
Should we just note the last one is the project would add significant traffic at the most congested times and
We did add that, and we do have that in the letter as it's written.
Okay, so we have this. So you don't want the first sentence and the other sentence appears elsewhere in the letter?
We can't, it was said, we can't be requiring that. That's sort of part of the whole application to the ZBA.
Is that a requirement in the ZBA?
Yes.
Okay, all right, if we have that elsewhere in the letter, I'm okay. And then the next thing was, in addition, the applicant should be prepared to address concerns about, oh, you know what? Okay.
Where are you in the letter, Demi?
I'm sorry. So if you scroll backward, okay. Okay, where I say in addition,
Yeah.
Right here.
I had another idea here. I thought maybe something like, in addition, the applicant should be prepared to address concerns about provisions for safe pedestrian vehicular access. The driveways don't appear to be safe for the intermix of pedestrians and vehicles. There should be better separation there.
But as I said, all of that is going to be part of the application to the ZBA. So in the letter, we've said in the letter already that the site constraints, there's little in the way of sidewalk improvements, there's no public spaces. It's suggested that the courtyard be more open to the street and that the structures, soften the streetscape. We discussed transportation choice, because you took out all the stuff that was the compliance with sustainable development principles, which we had in the other two letters, because I followed the same format.
Mm-hmm.
So it did say that, they say that there is, some transit, but I did throw in the fact that you had pointed out that the transit score is only 31, meaning some transit, and they should be required to provide van transportation and that sort of thing. You know, I did just sort of mention the fact that, you know, the problem with the driveway integration into the development patterns of the existing neighborhood is tough. I mean, because they got all these single family houses around them, and it's not really integrated very well with the surrounding neighborhood. So, so I think, you know, we can, as somebody mentioned the other night at the select board's meeting, maybe that's something to put in, is that the whole notion of, you know, how are they going to address deliveries? And, you know, somebody mentioned, well, the design has this sort of, you know, building goes over, you know, the entrance to this courtyard, you know, and that's an issue we had with Randolph Ave, is that, you know, what's the fire safety issue here with this design? And so maybe we could beef that up, and I'll take a look.
All right. Well, I think that I think the pedestrian vehicular access, you know, the driveway is not appearing to be safe for the intermix of pedestrians and vehicles. I think that that's the kind of thing that would be good if it showed up as a condition. I know the ZBA will rule on it next, but doesn't it give the town a leg up at that point if it's a condition?
In the letter from Mass Housing,
Yeah.
I'm sure that Mass Housing is going to require a full-on traffic study. I mean, we've told them, and everybody's going to tell them in all the letters, that, you know, the traffic in East Milton is a horror scene now. And how are they going to address
Mix on the property itself, though, because when
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? I don't think it can hurt.
Okay.
I appreciate that. I'll get you that specific language. Get Kathleen. In language. Okay. All right. Okay. Now. On the third bullet, I agree that bikes aren't supposed to be ridden on sidewalks, so that's why I'm suggesting to extend the setback, increase the setback, so that the sidewalk area can have pedestrians and a bike lane. Because they're saying that the project will increase bike and pedestrian access. So I'm saying if the goal is to increase bike and pedestrian access, it would make sense to provide more of a setback to increase the sidewalk area, so bikes and pedestrians could each have their own lane to pass through.
Well, where's the bike lane going to go?
That's what I'm saying. If you increase the setback area.
No, but I'm thinking you just got a little corner. And that their property is just on this corner. So you could have a bike lane that's going to go one block to the west and one block to the south, and that's it, because we don't have any bike lanes anywhere else.
What about even the alleyway through there? Well, the setbacks are right up against the property line. So.
Well, we've mentioned that, but as I said, putting in a bike lane that doesn't actually go anywhere, because we don't have bike lanes in front of Abbey Park, and we don't have bike lanes at Starbucks, and we don't have bike lanes, you know, as you go down to the fruit center. So it doesn't make any sense logically to have a bike lane that doesn't go anywhere.
Okay, I'll take another look at that.
Okay.
I might have been envisioning it wrong. I was also thinking if you were to set back the courtyard, it would change. But we have to comment on the plan we have in front of us. So I'll take another look and get back to you quickly.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Before I go to, actually, the point prior is about parking.
Any,
Yeah.
sorry, quick question. I was on mute. Sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Get off. When you were just talking about bike lanes,
Yes.
just so clarity for me, it sounds like what you were doing was coming up with kind of a, if you're saying you're going to do it, here's maybe a way you could do it. But I guess, Kathleen, I mean, you're making some points almost like there's no room there. Should we not be then just saying how are in the work, and maybe this is what we're doing, but how are you going to make access for more bikes and pedestrians if we don't even have the room for it?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
I mean-
that's a great point, Rich. I'm glad you brought that up. So page 34 states that the project increases bike and pedestrian access. How?
Yeah.
So maybe we should be pushing back, shining light on that and saying, well, how would you do that if there's no space for it?
Yeah, it's sort of flipping it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Rich. I'm glad you're off mute.
Sorry.
No, it's helpful.
I had kids running by, and so I kept myself on mute. So
Yeah, that's fine. Now, page the bullet before that bullet is page 34, and it was struck out. I would like to revisit this with the board. I feel that it's not enough parking. And I think the residents fear being left with traffic and parking overflow throughout all the side streets, caused by the development not having enough parking on site. So I just don't know. I think that the, community wants to see a thorough, tried and true plan for how the developer intends to reduce dependence on private automobiles before giving up adequate parking or formulas that have worked in the town before this.
But they have 1.5 parking spaces per unit.
Do they have that? Because they have 111 parking spaces plus 25. So that's 1.25 per unit, right?
1.25.
Is it
Math is
1.5?
not my.
Maybe. I think it's less than 1.25. I think it's 1.2 or something like that. I don't know.
I was a history major, not a math major.
That's definitely not math.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
So right now in East Milton, if people plan on parking in the street overnight, they're required to get a special sticker, correct?
We don't have overnight parking. Yeah. I didn't know that you could even get a special sticker. As far as I know, you can't park overnight.
Okay, so if people park in front of their houses in East Milton, don't they require some kind of sticker? Am I making that up?
I don't think we allow parking in front of your house in East Milton.
Do you know,
Gotcha.
Rich?
We don't allow overnight parking in any residential area.
Yeah.
Okay,
If you're a commercial vehicle parking in a business, that's allowable.
So what
Okay.
happens to overflow parking? People come to visit, people in these residents.
You can't park overnight. You run for luck. You have somebody parking your driveway. When I have guests over, I have people stay overnight. I've only got a single car driveway, but I can fit 3 cars in there. We don't allow parking on the street.
Okay.
And residency only requires 1 spot per unit.
Right.
Residency, and this is residency?
Yep.
So all of those homes in East Milton are only required to have 1 spot.
Okay.
yeah, you definitely get a ticket. Well, they're not always. But you get a ticket. I've gotten one.
Okay.
My wife has.
Stop parking the wrong way.
Yeah, yeah. If you park the wrong way.
Okay. All right, then I'm willing to let that go if it's in line with the
I
rest.
mean, it's an issue, you know, it's an issue for all of us all the time. You know, so, you know, you just have to jam as many cars as you can into your driveway or wherever, but
Okay.
The parking ratio on this is 1.22 per unit, and I think it would be difficult for us to make an argument that it should be higher than that when the whole neighborhood is only required to have one spot per unit.
Okay.
Just a
I
question.
didn't know I thought so.
1.22, are you counting the spaces in that parking lot they need for Navara into that?
I'm
I mean,
counting the
yeah.
136.
All right, so 136, okay.
Yeah, I think the parking, the lot itself is intended to serve the restaurants as per their
Correct.
agreement. So I think that what they're providing is one per unit, and that would be consistent, as April said, with the RC. So I would tend to say that I would agree that I don't think we should say that there's inadequate parking.
Those 35 spots for Abbey Park don't start until after 5. And they go away when the restaurant closes.
yeah,
So those other 35 could be for the overnight people that are looking to park.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So then back to moving forward. The process concerns. I wrote a few paragraphs under process concerns, and I gathered from Kathleen's comments that, you know, she doesn't think we need to raise these process concerns. But I think they're legitimate, and I'm just interested to hear what others on the board think of putting them in the letter.
Do you have more down
No, just if you go
right here?
Yep, just a process concern. So I say in East Milton, there wasn't any public outreach. I'm just, you know, the whole coronavirus, that we haven't been able to have a healthy public process on this. I mean, on any of them, but I think it's worth mentioning, because I think it's really, you know, an unacceptable situation to require a town to have to go forward with all these letters and all this without a public process, without having healthy public meetings where the public is able to attend and the neighborhoods are allowed to congregate and come to consensus and, you know, pull together and work together, because we're in a state of emergency. And I think it's worth putting in the letter that we object to that.
Unfortunately, that's not the way this process is supposed to be working. The town gets a letter from Mass Housing to say that there's an application for site eligibility, and the town is supposed to contact its boards and commissions and send a letter back. The public will have opportunity when the application for the comprehensive permit actually gets filed. So I think there's a misunderstanding about what this particular point of the process is. The site eligibility letter is only being done because you can't apply for a comprehensive permit unless you've got a site eligibility letter, or it's a local initiative program. Means that's a project that has been sponsored by the town, signed off by the town, proposed by the town, like when we do Habitat for Humanities or something like that. So there's only 2 ways you can file for the comprehensive permit. You get a site eligibility letter from Mass Housing, or you do a LIT program. So all of this, sorry,
May I just ask you a question along those lines? My understanding is there's no requirement for the neighbors to be given any notice that the applications have been filed with
that is correct.
Well,
Absolutely no notice.
I don't want to speak for you, Denny, but I mean, the way I took what Denny just said is we still are going through a very public process right now and just crafting a comment to the select board. And typically all of our what we do. We ask public for input at the beginning of our meetings, and even Cheryl, you've always asked folks while we're talking about topics if folks have comments. So I again, not speaking for you, Danny, but the way your comment was, it's always nice when we're talking about this stuff to not be online with only certain people that can call in or log in, but being in the room so folks can come in and talk.
Yeah, I know, Rich, I understand that, but all I'm trying to say is this is why mass housing isn't giving the town an extension of time, because we've made this sort of like a public hearing, which it isn't. So I mean, we could, we could certainly throw in something about the fact that we don't feel we had the opportunity to discuss this with the public like we would have wanted to do, but I think I don't think that's going to be carrying any weight at all with mass housing, and because it's not the permit application.
So I agree.
There's a whole. They could sit on this site eligibility letter for the next 2 years.
No, I know, and I agree with you. I just you watch the select board meeting and folks come in and have really good ideas.
Yeah.
And it's great when that happens. So again, the way I look at it is this type of comment, like you just said. It can't hurt anybody. Will it help? Probably
Yep.
not. I agree with you. It's just
It doesn't need to be that long. We'll just do something else. Okay.
Sorry, Denny, I jumped over you.
No, I very much appreciate your input, Rich. I think it's worth mentioning. I don't think it does any harm. I'm interested to hear what April or Cheryl think. But I really think that the public has not really had an opportunity to participate, and the public is involved we're all elected, and we're all, working for the citizens of the town, and our process is a very public process, and it requires public input. And I think it's an important thing that, because of a state of emergency, has been left out. And I think it's worth reminding the state that, one, they should have given us an extension. They should have hit pause. They didn't. And we did move forward as required, but in my mind, it's unacceptable. So.
I mean, my thought about this is Canton Ave and Blue Hill have had less time than Milton.
I think this sentence should be, the exact same sentence should go in those two applications too. I think wrong is wrong, and if the principle is the same across all of them.
And the other comment that I would say, just in terms of process, is that East Milton, there has been discussion about this site for a couple of years, not exactly this proposal. The other two sites have not been the subject of any planning or discussion by anyone, and the neighbors were caught quite off guard by it. So one might think that it would be actually more useful to have more time for those neighbors too. But I'm wondering if that's something that I've been wondering, whether there can be some overall letter that the select board sends that addresses concerns about all of these and process related to all of them, rather than having it be in each letter on each project, because we had to rush the other two letters out, let's be honest. And we didn't get to spend a lot of time discussing each sentence in each of those other two letters.
Right, that was a very unfortunate, and we never got to really sit in a room. We got to sit in a room quickly, but the neighbors hadn't even had a chance to read those 180-page documents and digest them. They were just broadsided, and I personally would have liked to have spent a lot more time on those two 40B applications as well. I think it's worth mentioning. I'm interested to hear if April has any thoughts, or if anyone.
Yeah, I mean, I take Kathleen's point, and I think she's probably right. I don't know if this is going to be that compelling to mass housing, but at the same time, I don't see any harm in including it. I mean,
yeah, I can say, yes, put it in. I just make it a little shorter. But
Okay.
And I mean, I think, like, also to Kathleen's earlier point, we're not really, our words per se aren't necessarily going to be in this letter like we thought they were as an attachment. So, I mean, let's put it in, and we'll see what the selectmen go with. And it's really their jurisdiction to move it forward anyways. But I think, obviously.
Yeah.
feel strongly about it, so I'm happy to support it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. And then let's go questions on accuracy of application. Okay. The comparable properties, does it say? Okay. Listed in the proposal. Okay. I had an additional sentence after I wrote this. Can I read it to you and I'll send it to you if you like it? The comparable properties listed in the proposal demonstrate that the residences at East Milton will be charging more money per square foot than all but one of the other properties. If Mass Housing is going to be doing a financial feasibility assessment, it makes sense to get an independent market analysis for a better sense of the actual rental rates. In the current climate, with recent changes in the economy, rents are likely to go down. Top line rents, as listed, are unlikely.
I think we don't even know what that, I don't think we have any idea what is going to happen in the next few years. Financial review is not a purview of the planning board, quite honestly. And, you know, Mass Housing is going to have to be looking at this, and the lender. I mean, all these metrics for all three of these projects are in serious question at this point. But I don't think that's a planning board issue.
I thought it's actually prohibited that.
Yeah, it is.
The financial analysis is only conducted by Mass Housing, and we don't
Yeah.
do any peer review on it.
It's not
We
something
can't,
the
the
ZBA can
ZBA
do either.
can't. Huh?
ZBA can't do it either.
No, they can't.
Okay.
When 40Bs first got popular a few years, you know, like what, 10 or 15 years ago, that was the battle all the time. You got your financial consultant for the developer. They had a pro forma, and then the town ZBA would hire somebody else to look at the numbers. That's how Bob Engler first got started with his business, and he's the consultant for the other two projects. And he made a fortune putting together these pro formas and defending the developer's numbers, and then the town would hire somebody and fight the developer's numbers, and then they changed the regs and said, we can't be looking at that.
Okay. All right. Well, then I took out the part at the bottom where it says what happened to downsizing seniors. I deleted that section. But
Yeah.
so we're going to let go of the bullet that we just discussed under questions on accuracy of application. We're going to let go of the downsizing seniors, but I wanted to consider adding an additional bullet here, because they mention those rental rates, and I'm telling you, those rental rates had me.
We can't be doing that.
But just, they mention high rents listed in the application. I wanted to say, the high rents listed in the application make this an unattractive option for the downsizing senior population. The project has been promoted as targeting the downsizing seniors in town. And I just wanted to mention that Jerry Tauger of East Milton states, speaking as a senior, it would cost me and my wife considerably more, possibly approaching twice as much per year, to live in a one-bedroom apartment at this location than it does to live in our house. I know that's anecdotal, but everyone, I looked at it from my parents, and I had the same sense of the whole thing, that the costs as listed in the application are not good for that. We keep saying we want something for downsizing seniors, but this is as listed, this doesn't meet that need.
But Denny, we can't be raising that as an issue.
Okay.
That's Mass Housing has to look at that itself. We can't be raising those kinds of financial questions, and no one knows at this point.
Okay, the only problem is that the applicant, outside of the application, has been saying that this is a solution to downsizing seniors.
Well,
So
it kind of, I mean, it is.
We can't respond to it. I'll accept that, but
it's not our issue.
Okay. Okay.
What it takes away from, it's quite honestly, Denny, is that we want to make sure that mass housing, and Judy, when she writes this letter, focuses on the issues that are important to the planning board, which is the traffic, the site design. We talked about the massing of the building and moving the height of it back away from the streets, protecting the residences that are nearby. Those are planning board concerns. Those are site issues that we should really be focusing on. If we end up throwing in the kitchen, you know, a lot of other stuff, I think it takes away from the serious issues that we want to point out.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I had this bullet list at the end because these things jumped out at me from the application. And believe me, I've sat through so many community meetings, and I can't help but have responses to this. The last two bullets are just conversational. Do we know what public safety facility is 2 miles away from the site? Do we know which one they're talking about? What is
The
that?
fire station.
Is it the fire station, not the police station? Is it actually?
Yeah, public safety is fire and police, and/or police, under the regs.
And it says it's going within multifamily housing adjacent to the site. The neighborhood only knows of 2 duplexes in that area.
No, there's a condo in the old Mason building.
They say it's almost all single family homes.
No,
I think there's quite a few multifamilies in that area.
there's a lot.
Is that right, Rich?
Yes.
That was Bill.
Rich is muted again.
Oh, Rich, you
I'll
muted.
unmute him. You're unmuted now.
Yeah, I don't know why. I got to keep muting myself. I got a lot of kids running behind me, so
Oh, that's okay.
I don't know many. I mean, if you're asking if like 2-family, like physically seeing 2-family homes, there's not lots in the area. Is there some rental properties in the area? I would have to imagine there's probably.
Are there multi-families? Kathleen's talking about a Mason.
The old Mason
The old
condos.
Elks, the old Elks building.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, you're talking about a few properties. I mean, it's not like there's massive. This isn't
A
like.
couple, but it's zoned single-family residential, and then there's a couple maybe non-conforming.
Bill and Allison, excuse me, folks. Allison, did Alan Bishop, GIS at Public Works, didn't he run a map which, or did, I know we requested.
Yeah, we do have a map of the multifamily residential. I can get that to everyone.
Some people be surprised how many 2 families are scattered around.
There are a lot.
But it would also show you the ones that are in East Milton. So can you distribute that map, Allison?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for including most of those points that we just discussed. And I just had a couple of things on Kathleen's final letter.
Before we go to Kathleen, do you mind coming back to one of your comments, Denny, that I wanted to have people reconsider a little bit? On the design.
On my letter, the design section?
Yeah. Calling the parking lot a courtyard is a misnomer in my mind. And also the one design solution, I'd like it, there's I think several different ways that this building could have a better relationship with the residential neighbors across the street. And flipping it to having the parking lot in the corner is one. But I don't know if we want to just give them one idea and that's the solution, because in my mind, you could build, instead of giving the parking to the sky, you can build over parking and possibly reduce the number of stories of the buildings entirely. Or you can set the building such that it's 3-story. You can set it back further from the street, have it be 3 stories closer to the street, have some front yard, and then have it be higher towards the back or towards the center, which might be better than having a parking lot at the corner where you're having headlights across into the street or to the homes across the street. So my thought is to say that what you've suggested is one option. Other options might be building over the parking lot, increasing the building footprint while reducing the height, Another would be to have 3 stories towards the street with residential common areas or retail with outdoor seating, landscaping between the sidewalks and the buildings, perhaps stepping back to 4 or 5 stories towards Adams Street. So giving them a few different ideas. And I can send that language to Kathleen if people are supportive of including
Yeah, that
that.
sounds great.
Yep, I'm supportive of that.
That,
Yeah, I am too. The only thing I would be hesitant about is putting specific comments on sizing. I mean, I don't know that, I mean, not that it matters, but I mean, I wouldn't be steering anybody to what's acceptable and not acceptable.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't like to steer them toward 5 stories. I would like to steer them toward 4 and under.
I wouldn't even steer them towards the size. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just,
But the point is that you have reduced height towards the street instead of a continuous height of the building, no matter where it is. It's a-
Right, we mentioned that, we've mentioned that in my draft about moving the massing off of the streets and back to the center of the site.
Okay.
And staggered, right? Do we say staggered?
Yeah.
the step down, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
then, if we already have those things in, then I'm not sure that we need the sentence then about changing it to have a courtyard towards the street.
Yeah,
I'm concerned about giving a specific design solution.
Yeah,
same here. I mean, the whole
Okay.
area is, it's yeah,
okay, then,
this size.
Kathleen, was that a nod towards the latest design of the Falcone project where they had kind of that opening with the courtyard facing Bassett before the 40B was filed?
no, I wasn't thinking that, I don't think.
Okay.
I was just thinking that what we had talked about with the Milton Village overlay district was what Cheryl had done with all the work about, stepping back, making sure that when you're next to the residential areas that, you're blending in better.
Mhm.
And so I was kind of really looking for that idea to be sort of applied over to this project.
Yes, I totally agree with that. And that was kind of one of the later iterations of the Falcone design before the 40B was filed, was kind of like that stepping.
Yeah.
But I think when I read this and it referred to the courtyard, I was thinking of their latest design that had this kind of open foyer on Bassett. So I think,
yeah, that's what I was recalling, yes.
yeah, so I think maybe our interpretations were different, but I like where we just landed with Cheryl's suggestion, so I think we're good.
Yeah, so Cheryl, if you send that language, that would be great.
Well, it sounds like you have some of it, so let me reread it and
Yeah.
I'll look and see if I want to make any suggestions. But Denny, you're okay with taking out that specific sentence about changing it, suggesting that L shape be
Yeah.
rotated? Okay. All right, so then you had some others. Thank you. I just wanted to come back to that one. So
Okay,
Denny,
all right, so
sorry, you had a couple
Kathleen's
others?
letter.
Yeah.
You want to go to Kathleen's letter?
Yeah. That one's fine. Okay. And it's her final one, right?
Not it either. That's not it.
Lots of versions going around. I've had the same trouble.
Wasn't sure which one we were looking at either, so I'm just deferring to what's on
That's
the.
not it. But we want to use that.
Did you put it in the folder, Bill?
I did, but I'm going to get it anyways.
Okay.
But I thought I did. Come on.
Okay.
This is it, but I did put this on letterhead to send it to Mr. Zulus.
Okay, all right. Well, if you could go to citing. All right. All right, so this first paragraph, last sentence of the first paragraph. The massing along Bassett Street would tower over the small single-family homes in the neighborhood, and in the opinion of the planning board, more should be done to reduce, you have the appearance. I just wanted to add the height and appearance of the building from the abutting residential neighborhood. You mentioned
Okay.
height earlier, and I just thought it's worth mentioning it again.
Okay.
Okay. And then under compliance and sustainable development principles, first bullet, let's see, 1, 2, 3, fourth sentence says the planning board recommends that some of the 136 parking spaces be set aside for public use. And I didn't know if that was legal to do that, to say that they need to set aside a use that's not on their site. Is that okay to do?
I thought that somebody had mentioned the fact that some of these spaces, and maybe I'm thinking of the earlier iterations of these projects, where when they were trying to, maybe April, maybe you can remember, where they were trying to sort of, appease the
Currently,
neighbors.
on the site now, some of it is used for restaurants, right? After hours. So in effect, if you use this for another thing, I guess you would lose that.
Yeah.
They're saying,
I'll take out that sentence.
Across the street is that parking lot, I believe, Bill, you said that it's in their permit that they have to use it from public use. And I
The
remember,
Starbucks one.
yeah, we had talked about in our meetings several times, maybe, I don't know if it was specific about this, but I mean, I had mentioned a couple of times that I'd like to start seeing us do more of that, especially in areas where there's a need for parking, right?
Well, that's what I thought. That's why I got that from, some comment that we had one of the meetings. I know that, right now there's a parking lot there that no one can use.
There is
that's
big
not-
signs that say you'll be towed. And there's
yeah,
so many.
I remember the discussion now that you said Starbucks. I'm okay with it as long as it's legal. I just
Yeah,
don't
no, I
know that you can require it. I don't know. Maybe check with town council. I don't know.
Starbucks is
We'll throw it in
required.
and see what happens.
Starbucks is required to allow the public to park in their parking lot because of their special permit that allowed Starbucks to go in there.
Yeah. I'll take it out.
But, it's, I just open it up for discussion,
Yep.
Oh, which line are we talking about in this piece that we have up?
I'm sorry, it's,
Bill, you have the Canton Ave letter
compliance.
up, not the East Milton letter up.
I was gonna say, I don't see what we're talking.
That's why it's not making any sense to me.
I'm looking at one in that folder that you shared with me called, the name of it is Residences at East Milton 40B comment letter. But it's they're not, is that the most recent one, Kathleen? Or is that the first
If
one?
your signatures are on the bottom, yep, this is the
Yep.
final.
Okay.
Not final.
No, I mean the last
Yeah.
one I had,
The most
The
current.
last one you had names on it, yeah.
yes.
Okay, so then you've got the correct one up now. Okay. And I was looking under parking, trying to follow you guys. And so, so can we go back to what you were just saying? Which paragraph?
It's on the
Oh.
second page,
it's
under number 2, the first bullet,
Okay.
fourth sentence.
fourth sentence. The planning board recommends that some of the 136 parking spaces be set aside for public use.
Yeah, so what, sorry I was trying to figure out where we were.
Yeah, no, I just didn't know if we could do that. I know we've done that with Starbucks, but I didn't know if we could do that on a
Well,
40B.
131 Elliott, which is not 40B, obviously, but that parking lot is required to, they're required to provide public access to that surface lot outside. And that
And
is,
it was in the comprehensive permit that we issued on Elliott.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess it's okay. All right, I didn't recall the conversation until Rich mentioned Starbucks, and then it all came back, so thank you. All right, so then, for me, it's the next page, but it's the second, well, actually, it's actually in the same bullet. It's one, two, so it's the next two sentence. Actually, just pick up there. The applicant has noted the fact that there are 2 MBTA bus lines as currently operated. These buses will not meet the needs of the new residents in this project. The transit score is only 31, meaning some transit. The applicant should be required to provide private van transportation to supplement the MBTA service to North Quincy and Ashmont stations. I'm just wondering, is that going to solve it?
well, I happen to know that the town administrator has been in conversations with the MBTA about increasing frequency of bus service through Milton. So I know, because the frequency is not close enough to be useful for a lot of people. And
I know, well, I take it. I
I
take the
have
bus.
taken it too. I've taken the bus to Quincy Center, and it's not bad if it, but if you look at your clock and you realize you have to wait an hour for it when you're ready
Yeah.
to take it, that's the problem. But
My
if,
plug is for an express bus.
sorry, April?
My plug is for an express bus into the city.
Yeah.
There you go.
They have them in Medford. It would make a world of difference.
Except they'll be stuck on the expressway with everybody else.
Yeah, they could do with a breakdown lane. That's what they do. I used to live in Medford, and it's equidistant, and you could be downtown to Haymarket in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Could work here. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. I just didn't know that that was going to do it. That was going to solve the problem, or we should add maybe a sentence to say, and other mitigation would be required to meet the needs of these 111 units.
I think what else could we do?
I
We
actually
could say
don't,
the applicant should be required to provide private van transportation and alternate means of transportation to supplement. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great.
one problem with that is, I found this with my office in South Boston and Seaport area. All the businesses that are running these private shuttles to train stations are clogging the streets even worse. So
Yeah.
they are, and you can't.
Yeah.
You're private to just those developments. So let's say we get another development in East Milton and require them to have vans. You're going to be clogging up with even more vans. What we really need to do is get the MBTA to get the bus service working better. That's the real solution.
So what we could do is change the sentence to say the applicant should be required to supplement MBTA service.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of developers in the city are required to do.
Yeah.
And I think they should
Provide a
work with the
stipend.
MBTA to improve service.
Mm-hmm.
They can advocate for it just as well as the town, I think. So, either that or it's a much larger town-wide discussion about shuttle service rather than one development. That's the way I think about it. It's a
Okay.
nightmare in the Seaport, Fort Point area that they're finally addressing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's an improvement, a great addition to that section. And then there's another bullet, and then the third bullet in that section. I thought that the first two sentences where it says the applicant, I thought it would be stronger if we deleted those two sentences, because I think each applicant should stand on its own. And I didn't want it to sound like we were, pitching the positives of this in comparison to the other two. I didn't want to set these neighborhoods against each other in any way.
Yeah, so I think we should just take out in that first, that the applicant has stated its intention to use low impact development and other techniques. and cross out the next start of the next sentence
Mhm. You can
and just
keep
take out the
exterior.
rest of it. Take out all of it. Just leave that first sentence in and nothing else.
Or you could leave that first sentence in, take the middle sentence out, and leave the third sentence about exterior lighting.
Okay.
That's
But I
fine.
think we could just
I mean,
leave
what
it.
I would say though is, I've seen a lot of times projects will go through evolution and they end up dropping their green features such as passive house. And stretch code is required anyway by the building code of Milton. So that's nothing more than what they're absolutely required to do. So I wouldn't mind saying that, keeping that first sentence, but adding something about passive house standards to it. So to
Mhm.
get it in there that we want to see that them pursue that, because that's actually pretty important. If we
Well,
can-
you know what I'll do is that I could change that to say mass housing should impose the condition, because they do that, that the applicant comply with passive house standards.
Mhm.
Well, why not say it as a positive, since the applicant has already said that he's going to do that?
Well, then if it's a positive, I mean, we can say that, and so it just should be a condition of the letter, the site eligibility letter.
Right.
We're encouraged by the applicant saying that they are willing to comply with passive house standards.
Yeah, I'll write it in a different way, but yeah.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Okay.
And there, Kathleen, I think the next paragraph is what you were talking about before when I mentioned not wanting to give a specific design solution.
Yes.
I think that sounds good. We could also maybe add something about the variety in the massing to respond to that same context across the street. But I'll work on it a little bit. But
okay, but I knew I put something in there somewhere.
That's I hadn't recalled seeing that. So thanks.
Go, Rich.
So are you taking out the unlike the other two 40B comment?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you,
so,
Danny.
we have this deadline of getting.
I feel like I've been heard, and I'm very, very grateful because I worked so hard, as everyone else did, Kathleen especially.
All right, I see Judy Barrett has joined our meeting, and I want to give her the opportunity to ask us any questions or speak to us if she would like. So Judy, can you signal somehow whether you want to be unmuted?
She is unmuted.
I think I just unmuted. And I didn't mean to raid your meeting. I really just wanted to hear the discussion because frankly, I find what you guys say to be very helpful. So I just kind of wanted to listen in. But I don't have anything in particular to ask. This was great.
Thanks, Judy.
Hi, how are you?
So Judy, we'll take this opportunity to apologize for the late delivery of our comment letters on the 648 Canton Ave and the 582 Blue Hill Ave and our graphics analysis, our massing analysis that accompany them. So thank you for turning around quick work, I understand, to take our comments into consideration.
Yeah, your comments were very helpful, and it wasn't a problem really, the timing. It was just a, I think communication generally right now is hard for everybody. So it's all fine. Everything's fine. But thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Judy.
Thanks.
So, so Judy, we understand that the select board through Melinda has given me a date of Monday to get the letter to them and to you on this one. So that's our goal here.
I think that is the plan. And I was actually going to just start working on that letter with what I had, figuring I'll just go through it with what I have, and I'll wait until I get your comments before I, finalize it and send it to the select board.
Okay, great. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you so much. Do you need anything from me at all, or are you all set? I just really wanted to listen in.
Mhm.
No,
Yeah, good.
I look forward to seeing
Hi,
your
April.
letters.
Pardon me?
I look forward to seeing your letters. I understand that the drafts may be posted soon.
I think so. Actually, they asked me to make a few changes. I was on their meeting this afternoon at 5, and we talked about a few other edits, and I think I need to turn these around tonight for them. So I'm assuming they'll be online tomorrow.
Okay, great.
Right. Thank you.
All right, thank
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your meeting.
you.
Yeah, good night. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, so I think, are there any other comments for the letter? Any board members?
My comment is, looks great. Thank you very much. Kathleen and Danny, I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and then just before we close it out, is there anybody on joining the meeting who would like to provide us any comments? Joe, did I see you?
Oh, I'm just saying hello. I'm just listening in also. I know how much work this is, and it's a monumental task times 3. So good for you for putting in the effort.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for your continued input.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for always tuning in.
We have one more.
I want you to know we're there.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad someone cares.
You are not alone. We are here. Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Joe.
Stay safe.
Yes, stay healthy.
All right, so one last item on the agenda is the condo conversion bylaw discussion, working draft. We had discussed a prior meeting that the housing production plan has a number of action steps for that require planning board action. And one of them is the condo conversion bylaw revision. And we, you may recall, asked the input from the Historical Commission, thinking that some of the properties that this bylaw might address are historic properties. So let's say if we envision that instead of a 40B at 648 Canton Ave, that house could be turned into condominiums and a new structure built behind it, and that might save more of the historic fabric. So we may be vulnerable to more 40Bs depending upon what happens with these. And we have other sites in town that are equally historic as the Canton Ave and the Blue Hill Ave property. And so this might be something that can help give alternatives to a single family or a 40B. So thank you to Allison and Kathleen for working on the revision, and also thank you to Melinda Collins of the Select Board and the Housing Committee for providing some comment to it as well. I know that Ned Corcoran has also joined the meeting, and he has interest in this bylaw and would like to provide us with some of his thoughts. So why don't we start with Allison giving us an overview as she's been working with the Housing Committee, and then Kathleen, if you would like to chime in, and then any other discussion from board members, and then we'll give Ned an opportunity and anyone else from the public who wants to comment. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So
Can I just say first off that this is, this is very much a draft, not, it's really open for discussion on all kinds of points. So
Well, one of
please
the
feel
things that
free.
I'll just mention is that I did email Alan Bishop, GIS. I'm not sure his title at the DPW. He does all the GIS work, and he did prepare a map. I asked for
It's finally coming up to the thing they've asked me to.
2 acres and above,
Unmuted
and
at the
I
minute.
think 5 acres and above. And there were 87 properties that are 2 to 3 acres in size. And so I've asked him to do a new map, which puts us into different colors for different categories. So one to 2 acres, 2 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and over 10. Just thinking that we could see how many properties just on acreage we're talking about. But something we should also consider is the size of the existing homes.
Of the
Because,
buildings, yeah.
yeah, because it's not just the size of the property. In some cases, the properties have been subdivided over time and they're not on large lots, but the houses are huge.
Yeah, that's a point that Ned had made to me at some point, that maybe we shouldn't be sort of locking ourselves into an acreage, but into a square footage of a building.
Yeah, I think it's kind of both, because I think there might be opportunity on the larger lot to allow for condos and additional units. That's what happened with the Burr Estate. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Burr Estate on Milton Road, I think it is, or Milton Avenue. And that was permitted, I think, in 1980, probably under the existing bylaw that we're talking about. And they have 20 units on that property where they converted the existing house. And also, I think, other structures that were on the property were converted. And I think they did an addition. I'm sure most people, when they drive by there, would never realize there's 20 units on that property. But anyway, that's, so I think we have to kind of maybe look at it a couple of different categories. So one is being a certain size would allow you to do an addition or to do another structure, and another category which is just about the conversion with a smaller acreage, which wouldn't allow for additions or new structures. Just a suggestion.
That's
All right.
an interesting way. Yeah. Okay.
Allison, would you like to take?
Sure.
Here? Okay.
Yeah, so, you know, I've been working with the Affordable Housing Trust and part of, thinking through some of their goals that are consistent with the housing production plan, and the condo conversion bylaw came up as one that could be consistent with, adding alternative housing stock to create more housing opportunities in Milton. So the idea of taking a stab at this condo conversion bylaw came up a few times. I'll apologize because as we had this kind of like going remote, I also had to buy a new computer. So my computer decided it would be a good time to move on to wherever computers.
Better places.
I don't know if this is even our most recent draft. I'm looking at it, and I know that we had thought a little bit more about striking that sentence or changing the date about any building on the parcel built prior to January 1st, 1980. And Kathleen and Melinda and I, it's kind of an ongoing effort. But in addition to that, one of the things that we were interested in is preserving, Cheryl, as you had already indicated, those older significant properties. And this might get to that. As you all know, there is no, whether or not an older mansion is on MACRIS, which is the Mass Historic Commission's inventory, unless they're taking tax credits, it doesn't have any protections. And this might be a way to protect the envelopes of those buildings and allowing for the interior to be converted into condos for its highest and best use. So that's really where we're at, and we're trying to take out some of the language that just seemed like it was redundant, and cleaning it up and working with everyone who's interested in this to get to a better place where we can move it forward.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, right now, the acreage that we require is 5. And so I think that's why we've got these 2 40Bs for the Canton and Blue Hill, because we don't really allow for, reuse. And those 2 lots are smaller than 5 acres.
So I'm looking at the map that
That's right. I'm muted at the moment.
Alan sent the property. It's from so 2 to 3 acres, there's 87. 3 acres to 15 and a half acres, there are 78. So that's 165 properties that would be between 2 acres and 15 and a half acres. And they're pretty much
How many,
where
Cheryl?
you might expect. Sorry?
How many, you said,
87 properties that are 2 to 3 acres. Those are pretty much scattered,
okay.
although they're not too many in the Residence C district. Yes. But you know what? You know, the 4 and 5 acre parcels are in the Residence A, these 240 projects, and Residence A doesn't require that size. But I can forward this email from him right now, and you
No,
can.
it's in the folder
That's
of
right, it's in the
stuff we got
Right,
from
okay.
Bill.
So you can see, Bill, maybe pull it up just so we can have this conversation of where it might apply. Do you mind? Is anybody interested in seeing it besides me looking at these
Yeah, I am.
locations? Okay. We can come back to the language. I just think it might be interesting for people to see where some of this is.
Which part?
The map, you have it in the folder.
Alan's pretty impressive with his ability to turn over a map pretty quick, isn't he?
Oh my God, he
It's
had it
pretty.
around in 5 minutes, I think.
It's gorgeous.
And then I asked for more and he hasn't gotten back to me. Yeah, I guess we have to be careful about how much to ask for. But there we go. All right, so the blue are the 2 to 3 acre. And the red are the 3 to 15 and a half acre. And you'll see like he doesn't have it by residence A, B, or C and AA here, but he could if we wanted to layer that over it. But I think everyone kind of has a pretty good idea by just looking at the graphic where it's more dense, it's more lines is really the RC districts.
Like this?
Yeah, like that, like
this?
Yeah.
Oh, like
over
this.
there, right. Yeah.
There's a lot of parcels in there.
There's a lot more parcels than people might think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you look at, zoom in, Bill, if you will, to kind of the Blue Hill Ave and the Canton Ave site locations. Because you can see, I can see right in the middle of the screen there is the Canton Ave one. The reds and blues right in the middle.
Yep.
So there's a lot, where it's not, those are all more than what the zoning district requires. And then the Blue Hill Ave, I think, was right there.
Yep.
The some of them, probably aren't suitable for new development, but some of them probably are. But the other part would be the layer in which ones of these are historic. So I think we could probably, do you know, Bill, if he can do that? Like his.
Yes.
Okay, so that would be another good layer that I didn't ask him to do.
These are layers that we can turn on, turn off.
Okay.
We did not ask him for that, but yes, he could take and put, if we were putting together a presentation, we could turn the layers on and off.
Yeah, it would be good to have the map where that's overlaid over it somehow, or maybe, I don't know if he can make the color somehow be different.
He can shade them, or he could put stipple on it or something.
Okay, great. So is there anything else in the mapping anyone would like to see?
Well, maybe well, it's probably, I don't know how hard it would be to do a map that showed, if you think about your idea of the 2 categories. So one, you have a historic house on a large lot, and you're going to allow attached buildings or townhouse sort of thing, or you have a large house on a small lot, you're going to allow the conversion, but not any accessory structures. Maybe it would be interesting to see how many of the historic homes that we would look at would be more than, what, 3,500 square feet or something like that?
What if it has an existing
Yeah.
accessory structure?
Or not. I mean, I know we had that one, a while ago with the ZBA, which was an old Victorian off of Pleasant Street that had a carriage house, that had a garage apartment. And the advantage on that, we allowed that the garage apartment to continue because in fact it was predating zoning.
Right.
But that was a small lot. It wasn't 2 acres.
Well, 1 acre is, it's fairly large.
Yeah.
Depending upon, what's on it. I think.
I'm just thinking whether we would lose any of them that are in the Residence C district or.
Well, that's why I was thinking, let's map out how many are 1 to 2 acres also. So getting below this 2 to 3 acre one.
Yeah.
And see how many are there, and then see how many are historic. Because I think what I've seen with some that over time is that the like if you go to the Canton Ave again, Bill, in the middle there, this
This Canton Ave.
right here though, the ones that are red and blue, pan down a little bit. Just so, can you move that up a little bit in the screen? Those that are in the middle of the screen. There you go. That's good. So that you see where there's the last red one in that grouping on the bottom.
Yeah.
That in there was that was the main house until the 1950s. All of that was one parcel. All of those smaller, and then that got subdivided. But that large house is still there, and it's on probably 4 acres. And I'm not quite sure how many, but there are others that are like that have been subdivided down even to small lots, like on Brush Hill Road. Like there's some that are 2, maybe it's even a little bit under 2, but it might be a huge house. You know? And it has a whole a whole 3rd floor that was for staff.
Right.
And I mean, I know there are some people in town who have huge houses, but there's the majority are you may end up losing a historic structure, to Allison's point before, because there's no protections, because it becomes a little bit obsolete for somebody to figure out what to do without conversion.
Well, I think we're going to see that. I mean, going to Denny's point about the changes in the economy and all the rest of that stuff as a result of this crisis is that, the thing that makes Milton so attractive are these old, lovely homes. And you'd like to be able to provide some ability for the streetscape to stay the same, but to allow for sort of more smaller, more efficient and, more manageable units.
Right.
So, but from the outside, we'd be driving along and you wouldn't see any difference, but you no longer have 18 servants living up in the garret, and no point to, and that nobody's going to be doing that again. So.
All right. So you want to go back to the language now, unless if anybody else has any comments or interest in the mapping?
A while ago, Steve from the Historic Commission gave us an additional document, and I think it had some numbers on it of historic structures that were sort of large estate-like structures that they were considered historic. And I didn't know if we could see that on a map. I think he gave us numbers, but if they could give the addresses to Alan Bishop and see them on this map, then that would give us a sense of where they are in relation to this. And that would help me sort of visualize. I don't know, it might be nice. I know that's a big assignment. But even if not, that list from Steve, I will try to look for it, but he gave it to all of us.
Yeah, I have it, I think.
Do you?
Yeah.
I have it in the same folder, so.
Yeah.
But I have to
scan it and send it to Alice, and then she can follow up with
okay, I'll look for it.
And we do have a map that has all of the historic properties already So we
Okay.
can merge the two.
Okay.
And I believe it's labeled, so that will
Oh.
probably be helpful.
That would be incredible because that would sort of show us what sort of, I don't know, for me, I'm a visual person, so that's really incredible.
Alan also did that.
He's amazing. He's so amazing.
He is.
Really is.
Cheryl,
Yes,
it's Ned.
and Ed,
I just, while you're at the map, I think it's a very helpful tool. It might be helpful to request Alan to map as much as you can existing condominiums in the residence B and C districts. There are lots of two-family homes, multifamily homes in the residence 2 and C districts that were there, you know, predate zoning, and which were many of which have been condominiumized under the state's condominium statute. If there are multifamily homes, they can be condominiumized as of right without any zoning. The zoning would deal with the creation of a conversion of a single family that's large enough to a multifamily, and then the multifamily being allowed to be condominiumized under this new bylaw. So there are lots of multifamilies out there, particularly in the residence B and C zones, which maybe should be accounted for so that people can understand where they're located. And the idea of converting older, larger homes in these areas might be something that people could understand how that could infill within these areas. My sense of this is that you really want to think about these very large, old, single-family dwellings that are located, particularly in these smaller districts that don't need a lot of reinvestment, and can be very expensive to reinvest for families that no longer need the space that is available within these larger homes. And they're capable of being converted into preserve them historically, but also provide a reasonable economic reuse of the property and create an opportunity for some affordability as well.
okay, I know that that can be mapped too, right? I know we got the information of where all the addresses are of the two families and multifamilies from the town assessor, right, Allison? Is that what you forwarded to me?
Yes.
Yeah, so we could ask Alan if he can map that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ned. Do you have any other thoughts?
Not with respect to the map.
Okay. All right, so then anybody else have any comments or thoughts relative to the map, including people who are muted, if you want to raise your hand? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Then Allison, can you go to the language again? I'm sorry, Bill, can you go to the language again? Allison, take back over, or Kathleen with some of the language.
Okay. So a lot of the changes that we made were trying to address the accessory buildings because they had, as I said, this was once again drafted with a particular project in mind.
Right.
So we wanted to provide more flexibility to allow accessory structures, and this existing bylaw doesn't. You could add a maybe tennis court or something like that, but you couldn't do, what we had sort of in mind was a picture that actually Selectman Wells had sent to me of a project in Dedham. I think Allison got it as well, which was the conversion of an older house in the courthouse district and first precinct in Dedham, which saved the house and then added, sort of connected structures that were all the same style. And you couldn't do that under the zoning that we have. And so what we were trying to look at was ways to sort of allow the planning board to decide whether or not an accessory structure another structure on the site would be appropriate. So we took out a lot of the language that limited the ability of the planning board to sort of look at a plan and say, yeah, we like that those two other buildings or something like that.
So we should then establish some kind of thresholds, which would give guidance to when we might find that is suitable, right?
Yeah.
How
Mhm.
much open space, maybe an open space requirement or a buffer requirement or a setback requirement. I'm just,
Yeah.
um,
But we don't necessarily have those in here now, but that's, as I said, that's why this is still a draft. But,
Okay.
you know, just sort of take a look to see, okay, you know, what parameters do we want to have for allowing that?
okay.
I can't really see it on this screen because
Which-
my
which-
eyesight's so terrible.
Which section are you?
Hold on a sec. Just so I was sort of I wasn't being specific because I can't see the stuff on the screen.
I'm on 9,
Number 6. Go back to
number 6.
well,
So I'm going to my phone and reading it there. So, let me see. So
number 6
we
is on
said,
one here.
yeah, in number 6, you know, it says that no new building or dwelling should be constructed provided you could do accessory facilities and structures. But provided that the planning board administration would authorize the total unit count. That's adding all these extra buildings. And we should take a look at all that because I think it's a mess, but.
Well, I think I'd like to suggest that if Allison or if Kathleen, if you've got some other communities which have some bylaws that we might look at for reference. Because
Sure, I can get
when
that.
read through this, I too was thinking, boy, there's got to be some better way or some better
That'd have been an easier way to do this,
some
yeah.
parameters. I also just wanted to make the point that I think that this could give us an alternative to these small subdivisions that we see with these roadways with cul-de-sacs.
Mhm.
And I really don't like those at all. But I mean, if you think about what alternatives we don't have very many. And
No.
you know, if you can have a driveway that can, you know, serve multiple residences, it just would make these developments more attractive and more fitting, frankly. So that's my plug for another reason why it's a good thing to tackle. So I'm thinking of the Pleasant Ave one.
Yes, I was too. Is that, you know, you're just getting more tarmac and, you know, more single family houses using up more space. So, and as I said, I really like the idea of trying to save the appearance of these houses as you drive along the streets.
So what do we think are some of our next steps on this?
Well, I'll take
I'll,
a look and see what I can find for other examples. And Allison, if you could do that too, that would be great.
Yep,
May I ask
I
a
was just gonna say that.
I just had a question. So if we're talking about like let's just say a 5-acre estate and it happens to be a large building and a lot of land. So you say, okay, the large building could be broken up into 2 or 3 condos and they could add, you know, and their coach house become its own condo and the barn could become its own condo. And we're sort of keeping it in, you know, historic, we're protecting the envelope, we're coming up with the highest best use. Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about trying to get 15 condos in there?
No, we're
Okay.
mostly talking about what you're suggesting,
Okay.
which is there is a property that is no longer functionally efficient. Nobody needs to have a carriage house and a barn and, you know, all this structure. So we would want to have an ability to turn those all, like the Burr estate. One of my clients and friends bought the old carriage house, and that's where her unit was. But we would like to have the ability, which is what you can do with this current loan, except that you have to have 5 acres. So looking at the house on Canton as an example, that's only 4.9. So they couldn't use the existing condo conversion.
Well, then
The house on Canton.
But not only that, let's just say on that one, for example, an alternative to the 40B, I mean, they have the tennis court in the back and they have a fair amount of land in the back. So
Yeah.
if we can have something like that where you're not going to really subdivide that property any further, maybe with Holmes Lane you could, but if you could add, that lot is larger than what's required for the zoning district that it's in, right? But you can't really subdivide it. So if you could do more units on that lot, then, and make it more comparable to the district that it's in by doing a conversion with an addition, a new building in the back, it's better than a 40B on that kind of site. So it's not just taking existing structures in my mind, and I know it may be limited in how many of these we'd want to allow a new structure, but I do think it would be useful to have an alternative to these 40Bs on these kinds of properties.
And I think if we loosen up the language a bit, it allows the planning board to evaluate that and make decisions based on the existing structure and the opportunity to create new structures if it's.
I do think we have to have some parameters though,
Mhm.
because otherwise I think there'll be a question about, well, as an applicant, it's there. What guidance is the planning board giving, you know?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
somebody might come in with something that's 40 units and we say, well, that wasn't what the planning board was doing. No, that's not what we were thinking. You know, but somebody
Yeah, no, I get
interpret
it.
it however they feel, you know.
Yep.
So that's why I think if we think about what are the kinds of issues that we might want to address. Well, first of all, we have some ideas about what the goals are, right? What kind of properties we want to try and address. And then we need to think about setting some parameters to those and how many sites they might be. That's kind of, I'm thinking, kind of next step. And then once we've done some further analysis, then I think we need to start thinking about a public process, you know, to kind of get feedback.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of thinking out loud. If, so those two 40Bs were just over 4 acres, both of them?
4.9 for Canton, and I think the other one is 3 something.
3.9, I think. So just under 4 for Blue Hill Ave. And I also saw that a property sold on Randolph Ave. I think it was also around 4 acres with a single family on it. Bill, you saw that too, I think. But there are, you know, if we looked at this map, we can identify how many we think that this could have, you know, be an alternative to the 40B zone. Because now we know that people have looked at these 4 and 5 acre sites, right?
Yep.
So let's see. I don't know if there's anything else that, other than sort of outlining our next steps. Does anybody else want to have any other thoughts about this tonight?
No, I just want to say thank you for doing the work. I think that all of the research has helped inform us. And if we can have the additional pieces of data, I think it will just give us more context for how to move forward. So thank you.
Sure thing.
Okay, so when do we think we want to take this up again? Oh wait, Ned's giving me an indication he'd like to speak, so I will unmute him. Ned, are you unmuted?
He is.
All right, great.
Ned is, and so is Rich.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes, go ahead, Ned, then following that will be Rich.
So I think I think this is a really good idea to look at this. There are lots of large, somewhat historic dwellings out there that really need a lot of reinvestment. And I think a condominium conversion is a really good way to do it. And I would encourage you to think about the size of square footage in a building, and then potentially the minimum square footage per unit that might be allowed. So, if you're thinking about how many units within a certain dwelling, you should think about the total square footage and then the maximum allowable square footage per unit, so that you arrive at sort of a reasonable scale. What that needs to look like, I don't have an idea at the moment, but I think that's one way to think about how you would authorize dwellings to be converted into multifamily and slash condominium.
Okay, so any other thoughts you have, Ned, as you think about it further, please send them on to Bill or Allison, and
Sure.
they can get them to us. Anything else at the moment, though?
Not from me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rich?
Yeah, I was just as I was listening to you. I mean, this all sounds good to me, but the only comment I was thinking was when you're looking at like as an alternative to 40B, is there an opportunity to craft it in a way that you're guiding people to some affordable housing as well? You know, that way it doesn't have to be like either a market rate or it's got to, it's either this or a 40B type of. We're looking at looking at that map. There's a lot of properties all over town, and in every meeting I always hear, well, we're never going to get to,
Well,
our percentage.
actually, that's a good point, Rich, because one thing, that some communities do will incentivize affordable housing by allowing more density or more units or
Right.
less parking or something. And, one thing we might consider here is different parameters if there's a certain amount of affordability.
Right. Yeah. So it would be interesting to see what people are doing, in any region, I guess, to guide people to that. Because what I don't want to see is, well, heck, they don't want to put 4 units there, so it's got to be a 40B. But what if it could have been something much smaller and, scatter those 40Bs around? I mean, scatter
Exactly.
those 40Bs
Right.
around.
No, exactly. I mean, I think that's the ideal scenario would be to scatter affordable housing all across town and in reasonably scaled projects instead of mammoth ones in a few
Right.
places. Yeah. All right. So what about, I guess if we're looking for what we might have for our next meeting, in 2 weeks, the only thing at the moment that I would think of is this, because Bill, if we have to get the letter out on the 40B by Monday. If the Connollys apply for an amendment to the special permit, we don't have enough time to advertise it in time for that meeting, the one in April. So it would have to be in May.
Yes.
So at the moment, let's keep the 2 weeks from now, which would be
23rd.
23rd on our calendars, in case something comes up that needs our attention. But otherwise, I would say we're looking at May 14th. And how about that as another time to pick this condo conversion back up? Ned's asking for another opportunity. I see a hand from you too, April?
Yeah, I guess my point was just going to be I'm anxious about making the Conleys wait until the 14th to even get their application heard, because if their freeze is unlocked, I'm not sure they're going to be able to have anybody working for more than a month.
It's just a matter of the advertising. We would have to advertise it 2 weeks.
So I guess what I'm wondering is, should we think about trying to hold a meeting on a different day other than the 23rd, like the 30th?
I see. We can look at our calendars.
I mean, I don't mean to rush us. I'm just saying the opposite is true too. I would hate, especially just the economic conditions being what they are, if there could be people working on that site. I don't want us to be the barrier of people bringing home an income right now.
Okay, so what about any time the week of the 27th? How does everyone's calendars look?
Wait. It has to go in the newspaper for 2 weeks.
I know.
So it needs to go in on the 23rd.
No.
16. You want to go 16 and 23. He's going to have something to me tomorrow.
Yeah, but we know what it is because they already gave us this. So All right, well, you can
It
ask.
has to be advertised for 2 weeks, so if we met on the 30th, you wouldn't need it tomorrow.
In order to get it to the newspaper,
Yeah,
legal
they-
ads for the newspaper on the 16th is supposed to be in there by the 10th.
Right.
So we're
That's
talking about the
tomorrow.
30th. So you don't need to get it in until the
Oh, so
24th.
he's saying their deadline would be the 10th.
Is on Thursday, so Phil's right, 16th.
Right, but you can't put it in the paper on the 30th for a meeting on the 30th.
No,
No, we
you
did
can't.
That
can't put
doesn't
it
give you
in
your
the
15 days.
So what he's saying, Danny, I think is the deadline for submission to be published on the 16th would be the 10th, which is
Right.
earlier than the regular deadline.
I mean, if I could get him to give it to me on the 13th early, I can try that, and then we'll go 16, 23, and then we can have the meeting on the 30th, or sometime in that week. It would be better to have it on the 30th because now you've got your 15 days.
The only issue that could be relevant is, and maybe we should get a feel for this, Bill, is the staircase, because they're doing all of that work now, from what I can see. And the other two things, I mean, the lighting and the screening on the roof.
On the roof.
Are far,
Yep.
far down the path. So those aren't really critical path issues, but I could see the issue of the parking spot and the need to put in the staircase on that first floor for egress could be a potential barrier for them to move forward. And I mean, people have an opportunity right now to make a living. The last thing I want to do is be the barrier.
Right, and where my sense was that there was pretty good consensus on approving that, it just needed to be an amendment.
So if the only thing they have to submit on really is this one thing.
Well, I think the way we can handle that is, Joe Prondak had reached out to Bill and to me about the parking space. I got back to him and I said that I felt as if the parking space alone, not the other things, was not an issue in a sense because of it still met the zoning requirement. But he came back and said, well, the language in the special permit is this way, so I want you to address it. But what we could do is get back to him and say, we're supportive of it, and we will go through this process that will take us a few weeks, but there shouldn't be any holdup to what they're doing. And I think he'll be fine with that. He's been fine with that on other things, right, Bill?
Yes.
Just
Yes.
getting feedback.
I mean, bottom line is the project is required to have 87 spaces. It says they came in and said, we're going to do 88. You know, they were giving us an extra space. The zoning says they have to have 87. They came in with 88. They're still going to meet the letter of the zoning itself. So yes, Joe will be fine with it. He just doesn't want to be the one holding, hey, it's at 88.
So, I mean, I guess if that's the case and we feel like that, he'll be allowing them to move forward, then that's fine. Wait till the.
I also don't think that they're going to be forming that staircase in the next month. So they have to rip out some of the steel that's in there. They have to put in new steel. They'll be putting in new spread footings over the next month. So it's a lot of them.
There's no choice about putting the stair in. And so the only other way that they could, I mean, there's really no resolution other than trying to revise the site plan to get another spot in there. And, it's not necessary. So it won't hold up their construction. I think it's really more of, we've asked Joe to make sure that, he doesn't approve changes to things that are in our special permits, right?
Right.
And so he's seeking planning board feedback on anything that's different, which is what we've asked him to do.
So we can tell him, we could just tell him that, yes, we're fine with this. And then take care of the paperwork.
Yeah.
Whenever.
But I think with the parking, I'd say, I think
parking.
we need some discussion on the other two.
I think the other two are a problem anyway, because I think we need more details on that, but why can we, so all this, I'm just asking, does Joe just need a letter from us now that says, yep, you can tell them that we're okay with that?
I will send Mr. Prondak an email in the morning saying that the board discussed this last night and has no issue, that the plan is to put together a amendment to special permit because of the lights and because of the roof structures. And
Yeah,
at the same time, we will address the parking space.
But also make sure you include what Kathleen pointed out, which is strict compliance.
Yep.
we want to take a look at that. Give them some more flexibility in that.
Right.
All right, so,
And if Joe has any question, he can watch the meeting.
and Kathleen, do you mind taking a look at the language relative to the strict compliance and thinking about that a little bit in the meantime?
Nope, not a problem.
All right, I think Ned, you wanted to speak. Go
Because
ahead.
my real estate
Wait a
practice
sec.
is not exactly jumping along right now.
Nobody's is.
Sorry, Bill, did you want to say
I
something?
wanted to, you said Ned wanted to speak. I had to unmute him, but he's unmuted.
I unmuted him, yeah.
Okay, this is the end of a long meeting. So my other comment was, at the same time that you're looking at the condominium bylaw, I'm wondering whether you're going to be looking at the in-law apartment caretaker residence bylaws as well. Those probably need to be buffed up, particularly given the reference in the housing production plan that you want to think about making some of those available for affordability.
I know
Yeah,
that,
that's on our radar as well.
right.
Okay.
I
I was
know-
just putting that out.
I was looking at it a little bit because there are a couple of little tweaks we have to do to that anyway as a result of what I used to have to do on the ZBA. And so, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
So there's a couple of things that relate to hardships, I think, that Kathleen has talked about. I think Ned and Marion have both represented clients, and I've been involved with a couple where, you know, it's about how the process works, which is very cumbersome and requires variances for. That those are one level of fix, and there's another level of looking at which the housing production plan really tries to address, which is to think about expanding where they can go and how they work, and that's a different level of discussion, I think. Would you agree, Kathleen?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
think we can.
Yeah, because you have to keep going to the zoning board to get a variance, because the way it is written is that you have to build the extension to your house, and then you rip it apart and put in an accessory unit and go back and get it approved. I mean, it's, you know, it's just nuts.
So I think that's definitely Ned on our to-do list, because it is one of the things coming out of the housing production plan that we said that we also wanted to address.
Yeah, having worked with both of the in-law apartment and caretaker, there are holes in it that need to be fixed, just the way they operate. But separately, if it's really it's a policy discussion that you need to have about whether you want to also make those available for affordability, because they become a second unit for rental purposes. Now you're looking at creating a multifamily as within a single family.
Well, I know
that's
that's one of the ways to address maybe as the housing committee talks about whether there's a capital A or a small a affordable, and the capital being the subsidized housing inventory and the lowercase being affordable. And, you know, there would be, I think some people challenged to be able to stay in their homes and maybe lonely in their homes, you know, I don't know, would have some opportunity for rental income, as you say.
Right.
And also, you know, when somebody builds one of these, and let's say, unfortunately, there's a death in the elder person who might be living in one of them, you know, what do you do with that unit, right? So you're supposed
Well, the bylaw says you have to take it out. Yeah.
Or you have to be able to convert it to the main part of the house. And
Yes.
looking at that at a couple of these, you know, in a couple of places in Milton, that can be a little bit challenging. So anyway, we have that on our radar screen.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anybody else So did we sort of settle on how we're not likely to meet again until the 14th unless something comes up?
Right.
Okay, we're gonna hold it. It's not officially canceled yet in the event something comes up, because Kevin advised me, Kevin Freitag, Town Council, advised me that we still have to have, conduct our meetings for things that may come in, depending upon what they are, especially for amendments and revocations. So we don't know what else might come in, okay?
Okay.
All right, thanks everyone. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
You, I'm out of here.
Wait. We have to-
She rolls right. She rolls right out of the
Oh, you
picture.
guys, yes.
You don't have to go very far for the bar. Okay.
All right, be well.
All
Stay
right, good
well.
night.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.